great. And may I say, I love your work, and you are literally advancing Western civilization by yourself.
Thanks, Rod. You make me blush. But let's not talk about the Fluffmeister, because you are listening to the Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley.
Hello there, and welcome to the Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley. My name is Draxter Dupre. I'm here in 1920s Berlin with Joe Yardley. Hi, Joe.
Hello.
We're broadcasting from an attic. It's snowing outside. It's warm inside. What a week in virtual worlds. CEO Rod Humble leaves Linden Lab. Browser-based virtual world Cloud Party closes after being bought by Yahoo. As you can hear from the station ID, Fluffy and others are already in the game promoting themselves as now the new leader of our beloved virtual world. I don't know about Cloud Party. Joe, you and Rod are tight. How did the news break?
Well, Rod and I, we're not real friends or anything, but we're Facebook pals. So we're in contact now and then. And last week I was bothering him for an interesting story, if he had any updates, anything interesting to say. Out of the blue, he just told me that he left Linden. I was, shocked. Pretty much at the same time, he told all his friends and family on his personal Facebook page. Well, and I, of course, immediately started shouting it off the rooftops as the second I heard it.
Yeah, and as we're taping this show, there's still no official statement. We and the residents and everybody else is sort of forced to speculate. I called Dean Takahashi for a little statement. He's the lead writer for GameSpeed at VentureBeat.com. He has been reporting on Second Life since the beta days before Second Life's official birth in 2003. And I do think among the mainstream tech game journalists, he's probably one to report most accurately on SL.
It's very interesting to see them try to do something that was a very sort of dramatic change from what they were trying to do before. And that was, he comes in, he built up The Sims into a very large business based on ideas and games that had been put forth originally by Will Wright. That was enough of a resume for him to come into Second Life and try to do things different as well. I think the way he explained it to me when he was talking about it was to take some of that magic that was inside Second Life and to put it into other apps that were more accessible. The Creatorverse app, put it out on the App Store, on the iPad, then it became something that maybe anybody would try. Putting patterns as a Minecraft-like building world, outside of Second Life, tap creativity of people. I think it was a very sort of valid attempt to take something that was sort of bottled up inside of Second Life and try to make it spread. And, he's leaving now. So I would almost guess then that, some of that didn't work. Maybe he didn't pay as much attention as he could have to, fixing any technical problems that there were in Second Life. I think that's all I would conclude so far.
Or maybe he just was tired of running a big behemoth cruise ship that is sort of stuck somewhere. The next guy, who's coming in now, you think?
Definitely make those million active users happy. Yeah. So whatever they do, definitely take that in the right direction. That's job one. The company does generate a lot of cash from those people. It had the right idea, I think, of trying to use that cash to create other new hits. I'm not sure how successful they're going to be in taking that sort of million active users and turning it into 10 million. That sounds to me like it's a little too optimistic.
Virtual worlds, are people never ready?
I think, there's almost like a comeback. Oculus VR, they're one of the hottest technology companies out there right now. And there's also the issue of timing. And, Second Life is pioneering, but it's also very early in this process. Oculus is coming back with a technology that's been put out there and experimented with before and tried. And it's coming back at a time when the technology is more fully baked. You can do this without getting seasick now. You can do it with high-definition visuals. I think there's a limited appetite among people for participating in an experience where it's slightly delayed. Second Life kind of started in that world, and I think it still has to improve the experience to the point where it's completely instantaneous and fluid and intuitive.
So that was Dean Takahashi from VentureBeat.com. A tough act to follow, Rod, with lack of Second Life retention due to lag and other things, but also interesting what he said when he speculated Rod maybe was let go because of the whole diversification strategy not panning out.
Yeah, of course. Lots of people say Rod did lots of good things. Some say he didn't do anything. We have a track record of CEOs not hanging around that much. So it could be that. It could be something completely different. I get the feeling, which is absolutely not a scientific way of analyzing it, that he decided to move on because it feels like Linden Lab is a bit surprised by what's happening. There is no statement, no preparation whatsoever.
Residents are between sort of very nervous and whatever, and actually some have told me, what, Rod, who is that? So it's very interesting. Couple of people called. Jamie Hancroft, the designer for Death Row Designs, also with Mad P and Dwarfins, she called with a few thoughts. She comes from a tiny country in Europe, so her perspective may be different or maybe very similar to yours. Here she is.
I am from Belgium. Sometimes it feels like I'm the only Belgian person in Second Life. I don't think Second Life is going to crash and burn because it's been crash and burning for years now. It's just going to carry on crash and burning in a good way. Rod Hannibal has been at it for like 3 years now. I think it's very draining to just run this, whatever it is. Is it a real company even? I mean, I don't even know. What are you actually running? They should just have Torley Linden be CEO and do all his speeches the way that he speaks. Friendly greetings. These are my new plans for Second Life.
Funny.
Crash and burn in a good way. That's what Jamie says. Another friend who called is Tyr Rosenblum, co-owner of Auxiliary, a fashion brand.
When I heard about Rod leaving, I was concerned about the impact of the economy. But it wasn't because of Rod leaving. It was because of sometimes the residents in SL can be worse for SL than the actual Lindens because rumors, they go like wildfire. We kind of look towards Linden Lab for answers. I mean, like kids to their parents, basically. They're still attainable. We can still talk to them. Because of that relationship, when something huge happens, we all do kind of look to them for the okay. It's going to be okay, guys.
We still don't have an official announcement, so we don't know what's going to happen.
I personally am not as fearful about Rod leaving to do his own thing because he left us in a really good place. So I'm not nervous like I was when Philip left.
Let me ask you a final question. Who should be the next CEO?
You should.
Who?
You, yeah. I mean, you really painted Second Life as a normal, fun thing to do. I've used your videos to explain to my friends and family, some of what I do. And it's the first time that they haven't kind of just given me a weird eye, like where they've actually gotten it. Before, they would give me this look like, you play Second Life? I've seen that on TV and it's really weird. Okay, Tyr, I'm sorry. No, I gotta hang up the phone, get a haircut, buy a suit, and get in the car and drive up to San Francisco. Is that okay? Yes. Wait, why am I getting a suit though? I like hoodies. So that's very nice.
No.
Even with a haircut?
Even with a haircut or a nice suit, you should not be CEO of Linden Lab, with all due respect. I think you should be Minister of Advertising and PR, perhaps, together with Torley, because I think that is something that Linden Lab absolutely needs, someone who can actually do communicating and a bit of good PR.
And Torley also has the trust?
Torley is much loved and respected by pretty much everyone. And I think he would be a really great person to at least be the face of Linden Lab and of course the voice of Linden Lab.
You dug around a little bit where Rod could go now, and you found out some interesting information, which I totally missed too, that because Will Wright also disappeared from the Linden Lab board of directors.
It is really weird that I discovered that Will Wright was gone by accident, because I wanted to know if Rod was still on the Linden Lab website on the board page, and he vanished eventually. And I started wondering where did he go, and I stumbled upon this website called syntertainment.com, and this is his newest project. And it is a very exciting project, completely new. And it's Will Wright, it's Avi Barzif, who's also with the Stupid Fun Club. There are a lot about augmented reality. But, augmented reality and virtual reality will eventually clash and connect and somehow. But the people that they've collected for Entertainment are people who've worked for SimCity, The Sims, Spore, Second Life, Carmen Sandiego, and Google Earth. And all these names put together, that just makes my brain explode with excitement, because what's happening there? And maybe that's where Rod went.
2 words, headhunting. Anyway, before we go to the longer interviews that I conducted on the whole subject of Rod leaving and Cloud Party folding, just a few brief comments. Last show, the Esteban interview stirred up a lot of controversy. There's lots of comments, which is good. I just wanted to respond. Why did I do the Esteban interview in character? I thought, and I still stand by that concept, that by presenting him as is and asking questions to the character, I do believe the listener can choose if he or she buys the Esteban shtick or not. And we see it reflected in the comments. Some say Esteban exposes himself as a real nasty human being, trying to justify his antics as satire, and others say he's the best Second Life has to currently offer, with him poking fun at the stodgy old Second Lifer who takes himself too seriously. In the future, we will pick up this topic by also talking about the so-called internet disinhibition effect, which is fascinating. And I have journalist Peter Ludlow already on tape. He will talk about the difference between bullying, trolling, griefing, and the history of that type of behavior in virtual worlds.
Yeah, I just want to say that I want to add that, some people said you're giving him a platform and attention. But on the other hand, we are reporting on what's happening in Second Life, and you can't just ignore him. It's not like we're supporting it, even though I have to confess that I do laugh at his videos. I think we couldn't ignore it.
That's the way I see it. Another piece of feedback we get, people love coverage of the Oculus, but people have pointed out that there's so much more in hardware and software, also in augmented reality, the Cast AR, the Razer Hydra, the Avigant glyph, which is amazing. So we will get to all these subjects as they are related to virtual worlds in future shows. Please always hit us with suggestions. Let's get back to the important stuff. Rod is gone. Cloud Party is gone. I called Harvey Crabsticks on the subject. He is an avid Second Life creative, but with a background in tech startups. He's currently the director of the Basilique Performing Arts Company in Second Life.
The interesting thing about Rod Humble leaving is he did not join a startup. He joined what is essentially an established company, and it might not be the enormous product that some other tech things are, but there is plenty of scope out there for smaller products, and Second Life is one of them. In many respects, he did a great job. We all have our critiques and criticisms, but a lot of people, I think, would echo that sentiment. He could have done a better job in some places, no doubt, but let's give the man credit where credit's due. Second Life is still running. It's getting better. And now he's going on to do a startup. It'll be interesting to see how he approaches the bootstrapping process.
Yeah, some do say that Second Life is sort of in perpetual beta.
Well, that's most tech products, though, right? Like, I can't think of a tech product out there which doesn't change all the time, and you're constantly rolling out new features. It's just the state of the world, not only to attract new users, but to satisfy existing users. There's always something.
And I mean, the ongoing discussion is if the challenges of Second Life are tech-related or are they sort of world administration-related. And possibly Rod Humble, who also has a background in these little art and indie games, that he maybe got a little tired of running a world.
I think that there is a difference between running and designing a game and being the sort of world administrator, no doubt. And he probably felt that. I think if you speak to some of the Lindens, I've had a couple say to me that anyone that says they know what to do with Second Life and know how to make it right is telling a lie, because no one really knows, because it's a new thing. I mean, that's totally different from anything else. There's not an analog out there.
And it's a million different things to a million different people.
Absolutely. Everyone uses it differently. It's what, to use their marketing phrase, it is what you make it. And because of that, there's no one policy that they could enact that would solve quote unquote the problems, because everyone's got different problems.
Now, isn't there a real issue now with the leadership, and especially with these unique problems of Second Life? Where should we go? I mean, the previous CEO said, okay, we're gonna bank on the enterprise market. That didn't pan out. Now this CEO said we got to diversify, and we emphasize the game aspect. I was wondering, from your perspective, the worker bees, how must they feel? I mean, are they now hanging in limbo now? What the heck is the emphasis now? Is it enterprise again? What's coming?
That's a fair question, I think. Having been through a lot of CEO changes in my life, in small organizations where a CEO does set a vision, I'm going to cheekily say that the vision that the CEO sets and the impact it makes on a daily basis probably is not huge. You still come into work in the morning, you still get your job done. There's things that you have to do, and they don't change overnight because the CEO left. I'm sure there'll be water cooler conversations, what's going to happen next. But by and large, the work is still there to be done. So the worker bees, as you put it, will still be getting on with their jobs. That's sort of what I'd hope, to be quite honest. I'd hope that everyone isn't downing tools. If there are, it would be symptomatic of something larger that was wrong.
Well, that's a lot of people would argue that there is something larger that is wrong, which has to do with morale and big vision. I hear a lot of people say, yeah, they have resigned themselves to being niche now, but they could be, if they were thinking more holistically big, they could actually really be the 3D internet thing again.
It's interesting, the timing of Rod Humble's departure, because it's the same time, of course, that Yahoo bought Cloud Party and are closing the doors, right? As residents of Second Life, we go through this existential crisis. We think that we are like everyone else. And perhaps the answer is we're not. Perhaps that is the answer. Perhaps it does appeal to a certain constituency. If that's the case, then that's the case. And the market that Second Life has tapped is the market. That could be the answer.
Maybe there is just no appetite for free, and by free, again, I mean creative, not necessarily political, because these are run by companies, virtual worlds.
Or maybe it's just the interface has not yet reached the point where it's mass market consumable. I mean, a viewer is hard to use. I sat my mom down, believe it or not, in front of Second Life and tried, and my mom's a pretty tech-savvy lady, I have to say, and tried to explain to her how it all worked and show her how it all worked. And she had a hard time, it's just difficult to move through a 3D space in a 2D interface.
Going back to the CEO, or the role of the CEO, your take on that they went away from the one product company?
Well, I think that's a natural progression for any organization. It's a sign of maturity in the organization more than anything else. If it's working for them and that's increasing their revenue streams, that means it's more likely that Second Life will continue to run. I'm just imagining the books right now. Second Life is clearly a large percentage of their revenue. They're not going to kill Second Life because they've started working on these other products. It just doesn't work like that. You don't switch off products like that. And as a result, if they're diversifying their revenue streams, that just makes them a more robust company. And I think as a resident of Second Life and someone who cares very deeply about Second Life, I can't complain about that.
I tried all of them, and I actually really like that they created that position for themselves. The demand for customization, let's put it this way, in the game field is going to be driven by younger generations. They're not going to go into a game and say, wait a minute, I can't change this.
I tend to agree with you. If you look at the shared spaces idea, is a niche that not many other people are occupying because of their success with Second Life. And I'm going to call it a success because I do think, they've created something fantastic. And
it's around for 10 years and people are using it, albeit small and consistent, and maybe not many are influx, but I would absolutely also call it a resounding success. I think we have to redefine maybe in the tech industry what the word success means.
Absolutely. I mean, not all success looks like Facebook. Not all success looks like Google. There is plenty of success out there that looks like having people come into work, do a great job, and making lots of other people's lives better. And fundamentally, that's what the lab has done. And Rod Humble has absolutely continued that. And so any negative view of what he's done and the things that the lab continue to do, I think should be colored by that as well.
Who should be the successor? What would be the successor's most important qualifications in your mind?
So in my mind, I think I probably want what most residents who are active and involved want, which is that the burning issues get solved. There's not a week that goes by where I don't curse, for example, group chat. Like, how many times have I sent a message to group chat and had it come back and tell me that, sorry, pal, that's not going to work. Like I say, I don't think that there is a huge untapped population out there who's just waiting to pile in. If that was the case, we would have seen it happen with Second Life already. We would have seen it happen with Cloud Party. We would have seen it happen with all the other attempts at this. And so I think they're in a great direction right now. If I was going to offer one change, I would say perhaps interact with the user base more, if you can. The user base is quite large and Linden Lab is quite small. And so touch where necessary.
Possibly hiring full-time, maybe just one or, I don't know, a handful that are constantly going out there in the field, talking to people, and then feeding back to the administration.
If I think about company structures, most of the time you have a product manager, and the product manager is there to understand what the user concerns are and help feed that into the development lifecycle. Perhaps a little bit of that has gone missing. I think the thing that they've been doing is working on putting out the fires one by one, getting out of crisis management mode. That's what you don't want to be in. The death for a company is being in crisis management mode all the time. And having the freedom and time to add new things when it becomes sensible is what you're looking for as any CEO, frankly. If you've got a product that consumers are consuming and paying for, and you've got that revenue stream, and you're not going to the begging bowl every couple of months or every year or so, then you're in a privileged situation. A lot of the infrastructural changes will free up engineers inside the lab to stop having to fight fires and instead be able to add the kind of crazy cool features. So would it make Second Life a better place? Yeah, probably. I'm happy with what I've got, but it would be a better place too. And so if they can get those changes done, if they can get all that put behind them, they'll absolutely be in a better place.
This also ties in with the fundamental, what I think needs to be done in terms of reforming the current system of capitalism that we have, because it's not conducive to sustainability. If you're constantly in this cycle of, I got to add more shiny to get these people in, the short-term thinking that is inherent in that system is destructive.
You nailed it. A lot of Second Life residents look at Second Life and think, oh, well, it's a niche product and I love it. But I wrote a blog post about this the other day. Becky, who's my partner in the Basilique Performing Arts Company, she wrote, I love Second Life in a blog post. And she didn't mean it in the flag-waving way. She just happened to write it. And just reading it, it took me aback. I sort of double-taked on it because you just don't see that very often. I think people should say that more often.
So that was Harvey Crabsticks. We'll also link to his blog because I do think we definitely should say I love SL more often. Harvey points out that these many positive things that happen under Rod's reign, as you mentioned earlier, Joe, in the blogosphere, is interesting to see these different opinions.
Well, people seem to be viewing his performance through their own personal experiences, which is, of course, logical. I, as a builder, have seen lots of progress during Rod's reign. We got the mesh, we got the bigger prims. It's all those little things that together have completely changed my Second Life. But other people are saying, listen, group chat is still a mess, which is true. We can't really blame Rod because we don't know what he personally did or didn't do. But he was the CEO and he was in charge, so he is responsible for both the good and the bad things that happened during those 3 years.
Your personal take on the other products as a strategy, is that a good strategy in hindsight? To diversify Linden Lab?
I think so. It is a way to show that Linden Lab and Second Life are not dead yet. I mean, I know that a lot of people in the media were surprised when all these little games came out from Linden Lab because they thought, Linden Lab, Second Life, is that still going on? Are they doing something new, interesting? And Second Life has to suffer for something that in the end didn't have that much of an impact. Of course, it was not worth it. PR-wise, it was worth it.
I tried to get Maria Korolov to call in. She writes the Hypergrid business blog about OpenSim a lot, and she wrote an open letter to Linden Lab. We'll link to it. On the subject of Cloud Party being bought by Yahoo, at the same time, Dare.com, a couple of weeks ago, seemed to be coming back, re-inviting former Dare.com residents Twinity, I don't know if anybody has ever heard of Twinity, but it's a Germany-based virtual world, is still around. There's a V-site, so there's all these different virtual worlds still around. I called Hanno Tietgens to comment on Rod leaving, but also about these other virtual worlds. He has been in all of them. Hanno Tietgens is based in Hamburg, and he runs a brand advertising company called Bureau X. He's been in Second Life for 7 years. He brought a lot of public institutions and educational projects from Germany into Second Life. I would call Hanno the number one evangelist of virtual worlds in Germany. And here he is on education, business, telecommuting, Cloud Party, and what his first reaction was to the news that Rod Humble left Linden Lab.
I must admit, I was a bit shocked. He was going to take Second Life to strengthen especially the character of a creative tool with possibilities we'd never seen before.
So the fact that he was going outside of the eye of the mainstream, was that beneficial? Or should they have done more marketing?
Well, I come from journalism first and then marketing and advertising. I know how the game is run. I've been working for first German television, and we had a budget of 10 million euros in cash, and we had another 50 million euros just by use of the network, the TV and the radio network, to promote our own program. So I know what you can do with advertising dollars or euros, and Second Life has never in the past 5 years been a situation where I would have spent $1.
Why? Because it wasn't ready?
It's not ready. I'm convinced now, after I've seen, I think I've personally been in something like 15 or 20 different virtual world platforms. I've seen them all. I've seen Wonderland. I've seen Twinity. I've seen Day.com. I've seen, you name them. I've been there. Blue Mars, whatever. We've been playing around with Unity for quite some time. I come from Hamburg, Germany. We have all those game developers here. Great people, great companies, very successful, some of them. So we're very close to the technology, making both experimental and also commercial use of the technology. The idea of a virtual 3D world that enables avatar-based interaction, especially also enabling user-generated content, creating your own environment, giving expression to your own ideas. It's just not what the masses can access at this point.
The fundamental question underneath, also in light of the fact that Cloud Party is folding and being absorbed by Yahoo, is the public not ready in general for these kind of open worlds?
Well, Second Life is not an open world. Cloud Party, yes. My hopes were actually in the last year or two, when you get to mass adoption, my hopes were really focused on Cloud Party, much more than Second Life.
You just said SL is not open, but Cloud Party is.
Cloud Party is open because all you need is a URL, and you log in, and your avatar resis, and you can't do much with that avatar. I know they've been working on that.
We are now, for the purpose of this discussion, defining open as making it easy to enter. So you can go in, you can participate in a lecture, you can participate, you can look at an art exhibit. But isn't the fact that Cloud Party is now gone, doesn't that prove that it's not the browser accessibility that is the key factor? A lot of people have said if SL would be browser accessible, it would be huge.
I don't think so anymore. Not at this point in time, because it's all about the content, And if it gets to that, and you see the richness that used to be and still is in Second Life, and also that's developing in the OpenSim communities, there's so much there. It's content and mass adoption. The content wasn't there. It didn't come. That came as a surprise initially, especially in the German SL-based community. There's been quite a strong collaboration. The Berlin guys even got a large write-up in Spiegel, the leading German news magazine in Germany. They got great PR, but except for the Fraunhofer Institute, there was no corporate involvement. Nobody came back who was in Second Life before.
It didn't really succeed in getting people in, like you were saying, in the game designers in Hamburg is one of the centers where these people congregate. Is it that these people, the professional game designers, still look at maybe the entire segment of virtual worlds as a playground for amateurs who don't know what they're doing?
I don't think it's about game designers. They want to design games. They design games. They don't need the whole idea of an open, accessible, avatar-based virtual world, because they create their own kinds of secluded virtual worlds with their own storytelling, with strong storytelling, with great music, with wonderful avatars, and with clear purposes and all these things that you have in games and that people go to games for. I think what we were all looking for, so many of us were looking for in Second Life, was really like, and what Second Life still is. Edward Castronova once in a lecture on our campus Hamburg, he called it a Petri dish. He called it the Petri dish for a way to interact personalized on the internet. And that's, I think, is a vision that's driving many of us, and still is to this very day driving many of us. Once more, to this really work out, it needs the companies coming in, communicating. It needs the universities coming back. So many were there, and so many have left because it's just proven too difficult for them. It's proven unreliable as a collaboration tool. This is my experience in the last year. I was so sad to really experience that I couldn't even have a group of 35 really talented and really open kids that came in and take them through a one semester course without the worst of voice issues, lag issues, crashes, constant updates that kept, like one was on Windows 8 and could just for weeks not come back, even though he has to be participate in the course to get his bachelor degree and all these things. And this, for Second Life, it's year 11, and there's no competition even. Even Cloud Party didn't turn out to be a competition, because I think it's got to start with the advertising money, and they're not coming back. And I think that's a very simple answer to why they're still struggling, even understanding social media like Facebook or Twitter. There's two core issues when it gets to that. One is when I entered Second Life, Facebook, okay, was there, but it was not in Europe. Nobody had heard about it, or hardly anybody had heard about it. It has just been started, and the iPhone wasn't there at all. And that's the two big things that have changed within the last 7 years. There's social media on a scale that maybe some of us were dreaming about when we first entered Second Life. When my avatar first rest, of course, I saw the whole world. I saw avatars falling from the sky 3 in a minute on, I don't know, Goethe or whatever those welcome islands were back then. And I thought, wow, I'm one of the first, and 1 billion people is going to be here soon. Well, they're there, but they're in Facebook, and they're content with 2D and chat functionality and a bit of video and whatever.
I'm sorry, here comes the cynic in me. I find that rather sad. When I look what people make in Second Life every day, the content creators, it's just amazing. But you're so right with the conundrum of, on the one hand, there's a multitude of amazing games where the game creators create their own universes. They're very playable, they're consumable, the game god is in charge. So maybe the entire idea of the prosumer, that mixture of somebody who consumes but also creates, we were very idealistic that would happen a lot sooner, I think.
Well, but I think everybody who got enthused by those new possibilities the internet has been offering for us was sort of misled by the anticipation that all of a sudden everybody would be a prosumer. It's so simple. There's like 10 people around the fire. If you're lucky, 3 of them are willing and ready to tell a story. Usually there's only one. Or there's 10 people in a room, and one's able to play the guitar, and the other 9, they love to listen. They love the experience. They love to be there, but they cannot play the guitar. And the best that you'll get is that they'll do some tapping on a table or their knees or whatever, but they can't play along because they've never learned how to do it.
Maybe it's not that bad that one person tells the story. and the others listen. Or maybe they need more time to develop their own voice, and maybe we need to listen to 20 stories before we then come up with our own, and that just needs time, and there is a delay. I would argue the existence as a niche for creative people, there is a user-to-user community among artists and creatives, and fashion, by the way, which is big. You know, maybe that is just what they have to resign themselves to being. You know, maybe they can survive well without anybody from the educational community and without anybody from the business community.
I don't understand the calculation. I don't understand it anymore at all. I may have understood some of it at some point. They're renting out a server at, I don't know, the cost of the whole machine, like in 2 months rent for the full server. They got it refinanced. And the rest goes, of course, into staff, into development, further development, all these things. And I don't know exactly what the numbers are. And I know what it costs to run a team of 200 people. We've never been that big. We had 48 at the most. But still, I know what the costs are for that kind of highly professional and creative team that they obviously have at Linden Lab. It may just not be sustainable on that scale. It may just not be sustainable.
What about the metaverse? I don't want to let go of this idea of the metaverse, of everything interconnected. Just like the real world is interconnected, I can take a plane and I can fly over here and then I'm here. OpenSim, yeah, it's fine, but I want to go from here to there. Is the metaverse completely dead?
Second Life has been the closest to a materialization. Interesting term when you were talking about virtual worlds, but it materialized. It materialized for me personally. I've bumped my head on all those doors and everything. So it was there, or it is there. It's the closest to that vision. There's only one other vision, and I think Google is very, very far in working on that, and that's just a mirror world. And there's been a lot of mirroring in Second Life and others. And for me personally, that's been nice, but it's not the way to go. It's not the creative side. It's not the fantastic side and everything. Cloud Party was so much closer to the metaverse because it was basically the internet paradigm in terms of accessibility, clicking from one location, say, to the other. From one room, they had this cloud metaphor. Second Life has the island metaphor. I love them both. And the only thing that Cloud Party didn't have is that abundance of, as you say, mind-boggling content that Second Life already has. Once again, this is only a fraction of the mind-boggling content the rest of the real physical world holds for us, and the minds of all these creators who've never even entered a virtual 3D world so far. What is needed is a tool set that enables this meta abundance of creativity to be accessible. And Second Life has been sort of digging its own grave a bit, I think, with the whole mesh myth. Mesh to all those game people is an old thing. They get an education doing it, they create it, and what they want then is to be able to bring it up even in either in an environment totally controlled or an environment totally accessible, but they want it out there. And in Second Life, they have to put it in there.
Yeah, but they have a world.
Yeah, you're right. It's wonderful, but it's laggy.
All right, Hanno, lag, be that as it may. My final question, who should the next CEO be? What kind of qualifications must she bring?
I really think the next CEO should be ready to scale down. This may sound surprising because usually you book a CEO and they have all these goals they have to achieve to grow and whatever on a quarterly basis. I've heard in the States it's a monthly basis sometimes. All I can say is the technology is not ready for the masses, but it's a beautiful tool for creativity of a sort we haven't seen before. Maybe downsizing and concentrating on that creative community, which is making a lot of money, which is very alive, could be a way forward. Cut the price, especially for the creative community from all I see. There's strong competition from OpenSim. You can run your own sim for next to nothing. You can run your open sim on your own laptop if you want, and you can even run it on a stick. So price must come down, and this may mean you have to go on the break as far as development of new items go. Just get those things going that the communities and everybody has been talking about for as long as I've been in Second Life.
So that was Hanno Tietgens, aka Exxon Emoto. Joe, I want to ask you, isn't it possible that rolling Cloud Party into Yahoo actually means that there is a rising interest in web-based virtual worlds? I mean, that could be the reason why they bought it.
Oh, absolutely. I am quite sure that Yahoo, both just like most big internet and computer companies, know very well that virtual reality is going to be really, really big. And, they want to get ahead of everyone else. I think that every company at this moment who knows what's happening in the world is looking for how they can get involved with virtual reality.
Let's get to the next interview. I interviewed Yvonne Haining and Joyce Betancourt, aka Inkenzo, and Rhiannon Chatenois. They're longtime Second Lifers. Yvonne's Green Fairy avatar is probably seen in countless Second Life reportage and documentaries. Back then with Mia Farrow, Ariana Huffington, the U.S. State Department. Joyce runs the nonprofit Commons in SL. She's co-founder of Avacon. They ran the Second Life Community Convention. And they're both now working together in a new startup called Edify, which is a portal for educators interested in all sorts of types of social media. I hope I got that right. If not, please correct me in the comments. I asked them to describe their perception of Linden Lab CEOs over the years based on their interaction with them, starting with company founder Lord Philip Rosedale.
Well, I mean, I think obviously he was kind of the visionary. He had a dream, and I mean, a similar dream. You can go back to the Neil Stephenson sort of stuff, but he had a dream of this sort of place that we could all create in, this collective metaverse, however you want to kind of put it, right? And a lot of us, especially those of us early on, I think, bought into it. It had this sort of collaborative, creative spirit.
Yes. And before I met Philip, I had met Corian Drake at a conference that was more futurist related. And I was taken with the culture and with the concept of people creating a new economy and new worlds together and owning that themselves. So the culture that Philip created was magnetic, and it was what drew me in.
Philip is, I guess you could call him a cyber utopian. And Yvonne, you just said, yeah, the land and we own it. I mean, recent lawsuits suggest that we don't own anything. So isn't this all a pipe dream? And wasn't this then good that Mark Kingdon came in and said, kids, let's focus on business?
I certainly liked Mark Kingdon for his sort of as a person and for his sort of spirit. But I mean, I think he's also kind of a product of the time and the place where Linden Lab was at that time. I kind of probably applauded him because in some ways he was probably more in world as a regular person than probably any of the CEOs. He would go shopping.
Yvonne, you indicated that you lost a little bit interest as the dream shifted or possibly died. What do you think of the marking opinion?
My energy shifted as the culture shifted. So I haven't had a lot of interactions with any of the other CEOs because I was creatively into an idea that existed in some of the earlier iterations of Second Life. I stayed with Second Life a lot longer than I had with any other world or network.
Wait a minute, are you gone now? Are you out?
Not completely, although I don't usually go in as the avatar that I'm known as. My avatar in Kenzo has not been in Second Life for quite some time.
So you're undercover, so because your fans are maybe a little bit crazy and you have to sign too many autographs. Now, Rod Humbledon came in and he shifted it in ways that a lot of people were critical. He embraced Second Life also as a game, and he called residents customers and those kind of things. Joyce, were you hopeful that he was the right guy?
Well, I mean, I think obviously we're all always hopeful that whoever's next is the right person. And even whoever comes next now for CEO, I think we'll be in that, hoping that they sort of have this broader sense of importance in the community and, hoping for that broader metaverse and some of those things. I mean, I definitely think, he came with a lot of interesting and some in some ways overlapping ideas from the game industry. Like certainly the effort he's put into sort of making things sort of smoother and the updates and more stable. You know, those were all great things that I think came out of his reign. And even some of the, you know, you could say, yes, it came from an entertainment vein. And like you said, sort of some of that, we're all customers. I think that was already happening before him.
Well, I think he was far more market driven, and in the process, the community became more market driven as well.
Having had very kind of official interactions with the lab over the years, like I said, like running the Second Life user like community conventions, that took like, you know, meetings and signing contracts and getting into licensing agreements with them and all of that. And, you know, you saw the evolution of that over the years. You know, the first one was in 2005. The last one we had was in 2011.
So did it evolve basically from a handshake to a, like, here's a 50-page contract? Is it kind of like
yeah,
that?
I mean, certainly, yeah. I mean, and, you know, that evolution precurses Rod. So I think it's been going in that direction. And you know, it's probably more akin to Philip leaving initially than it, and the change of that probably more so.
So who should be the CEO?
You know, back in the day, I would have loved to have seen somebody like Robin, right? Who was, you know, kind of in one of the only female execs.
Robin Harper, yes.
Yeah. But I think that day is come and gone, right? That possibility of that. Robin, if you're out there, we want you back. No. So yeah, I don't know necessarily. You know, there are kind of huge people like Jane McGonigal out in the game sphere, but I don't think this would appeal to them.
No, she wrote a book about games that my wife gave me for Christmas, and I didn't read it because there's no single mention of Second Life, so I sold it.
Oh,
that's how stubborn I am. I'm a 12-year-old deep down. Yvonne,
I was going to say, most of the women leaders in the game industry, like Jane McGonigal, Nicole Lazaro, Tracy Fullerton, they're all doing other really interesting things. They're not necessarily willing to go and step into a company that's been around for 10 or more years. So it takes a unique personality to take this one on.
Like anybody who's truly that dreamer, inventor, creative sort, sooner or later that urge to like, okay, well, you know, you're either kind of it's still improving and in love and finding ways to kind of broaden what you've done, or you decide, well, you know what, like this is as much as I can do with this, and I have something else that I need to kind of move on to birth, right?
Final question: are we any closer now that Rod is leaving to the dream being fulfilled of the metaverse, or are we further away than ever before?
Well, I mean, back in, 2008, 2009, when there was still a Linden Lab interoperability team, you know, there was that, they were part of that, you know, sort of solution of trying to find a greater metaverse. And even, you know, talking with other, not just open sim focused peeps, but others outside of that. I'd love to say it would be great to sort of see that come again, this idea of thinking on that larger sort of metaverse and let's all interconnect things. And how do we glue those people back together? Because again, we're all the same community, even if we're kind of playing here, there. In a future, my perfect future, Linden Lab would be part of that too, right? You know, people were hoping that like Linden Lab could be that glue, like the united commerce system of things, right? And stuff like that. So, I mean, there's still those questions out there, and I don't necessarily know that they would ever go back to something like that.
Yvonne, have you given up on the metaverse idea? How about you?
I have not given up on the metaverse idea, but interoperability is a moving target in many cases. And what has struck me about Second Life is it's often been a place for entrepreneurs and people who are extremely creative. And so having the flexibility to continue to be extremely creative often drives people to go and do bigger and better things, right? To figure out how to connect to this world and that world and how to do things that haven't been accomplished before. I think there's a lot of room to continue to play in that space. I'm currently taking on a new artist residency in an immersive dome so that I can do 360 projection with the mix of live and virtual experience. A lot of what we did in Second Life informs what we do in the real world. So we are avatars creating in the real world the same way we are avatars creating in Second Life. I just spend most of my time right now creating with other groups physically. I think we are just breaking through those walls. I mean, there's a lot more to come. There's so much more we can do when it comes to interactivity, immersion, being able to fully sense and communicate effectively, being able to collaborate effectively across time zones and worlds. I think we're just starting. This is our playground.
This meld of real life and virtual is sort of the best ideal, right? Whether that be through community or through these, kind of mixed reality experiences or whatever.
It's exciting times. I mean, if you think of the whole Internet of Things connected, you think of 50 billion machines talking to each other in 5 years. If that's happening through high fidelity or some other mechanism, it's an exciting time to be creating.
All right, so that's all the Rod Humble Cloud Party issues for this show. Now we have very little time left to rush through all these other news. I actually have a new Drax Files World Makers video episode out today that I am quite proud of. It's about Feed a Smile, Live and Learn in Kenya, where Linden dollars are brought to Kenya and children can go to school because of avatars donating Linden dollars to this cause.
I just hope that lots of people see it, and especially the outsiders and people who think that Second Life is all just weird and wacky and outdated.
Next subject that we also didn't get to, the Syria project by Noni de la Peña. Noni de la Peña is a filmmaker that I have collaborated with over the years in Second Life, starting with the replica of the Guantanamo prison camp in 2007. And this year she went to Davos in Switzerland to the World Economic Forum with a project for the USC School of Cinematic Arts called the Syria Project, where you can immerse yourself in the Syria situation of civil war, of refugee camps. It is simply amazing. It works with Oculus Rift type goggles that they built there. I think there's only one prototype in existence. Noni was scheduled for this week, but we'll air that interview in the next couple of weeks. Meanwhile, on the blog, you see the link to the video that shows you a little bit more from the Syria project. Another story that was bumped due to breaking news is Nick Yee, who will come on the show. He wrote an article about his book, The Proteus Effect. He has been studying the psychological impact of our avatar identification. And on slate.com, you can read the article, The Proteus Effect, Why Virtual Worlds Have Real Effects. Fascinating. Actually, my Second Life wife, Momi Dupree, filed a story about a similar project that Nick Yee did back at Stanford in 2007. We'll link to that too. Lastly, the Bitcoin CEO was arrested. Does that bother you at all, Joe? Is that surprising that the Bitcoin CEO was arrested for money laundering?
Well, I don't know him personally, so I can't say that I'm really upset about it. But I'll also have to admit that all this technical stuff about where money goes and who's responsible for what click is a bit complicated. And can he claim that he's completely innocent just for transferring money from one person to another? I don't think so, because, if I gave money from one drug dealer to another in real life, I'd also be arrested.
We don't know if it's alleged that he bought drugs on Silk Road, that netherworld, which has since been shut down.
And reopened.
Just like the brothel you run in Amsterdam, right, Joe?
I don't run a brothel in Amsterdam.
Hey, I just want to put out rumors so people have something to talk about.
Oh, yeah, you and your rumors.
But anyway, the Bitcoin phenomenon is very important, and we'll tackle that with some experts yet to be scheduled.
Yeah, I wonder what would have happened if someone used Second Life for drug money laundering.
Let's not even mention that as a hypothetical. People will think, oh, is that true? Well, let's pick it up and report it as true.
Let's not mention that you can buy cocaine and absinthe and opium in 1920s Berlin either.
Speaking of 1920s Berlin, favorite things to do, important events, stuff that you're working on. You're working on a great project, the Stolperstein project in Berlin. Tell us a little bit what that is.
Well, the Stolperstein project is a project where an artist in Germany makes little stones. Stolperstein means stumble stone or stumbling block. And he places them in streets outside the houses where people used to live who were murdered during the war, victims of the Nazis. These are homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, Jews, gypsies, all the kind of people that were killed during the Nazi regime. And these are quite impressive monuments because they're monuments to one single person. And you're walking down the street and suddenly you see a little stone that says, this family lived here or this person lived here and was murdered in Auschwitz. And these stones are placed all over Europe. The 1920s Berlin Project has already sponsored one last year for a Jewish girl. And this year we're trying to sponsor two. And they are quite cheap. I think they're only about 120 euros each.
So you are collecting this money. You're putting the Stolperstein in 1920s Berlin in the virtual world, but you also then put the money towards the physical Stolperstein.
Yeah, there's a donation meter at the entrance of 1920s Berlin. And as soon as we've got enough money, we're going to call the artist and tell him to place two more stones. And we'll pick the kind of person it is for. We can pick the name and we'll do that all together. And it's going to be great the next time I'm going to visit real life Berlin to know that there is a monument to a victim of Nazism there in that city in real life.
Which was made possible by collections done in the virtual world.
Absolutely. And I've taught the artist and the people behind the Stolperstein project, and they are quite amazed and impressed with what we're doing.
Great, perfect. And we'll leave you these last few minutes with a couple of outtakes from our fearless leader who has left the building, Rod Humble. These are outtakes from an interview I did with him last summer. Enjoy, and Joe, I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Auf Wiedersehen.
I think it's an amazing thing that after 10 years, we have 1 million people active every month. We have 400,000 odd people sign up every month. At least from my background, I come from the world of computer games. That never happens. The reason why is pretty clear, which is it's this wonderful creative platform. And I think that being able to see this avenue where people can make whatever they want and they can share it and they can sell it and they can socialize, I just think it's a tremendous thing in the world, and I'm very pleased with it. I think that children, but my kids are the same, immediately they are drawn to things that they can make and play with. And they are not drawn to fixed experiences which are linear. And my kid's the same. He loves Minecraft, he loves Second Life, he loves being able to make things. And I think that's more traditional. I think that people are naturally drawn to being able to play rather than follow somebody else's fixed path. I think we may look back on the video game business, the 80s up to 2000 as something of a historical anomaly. This is a key problem for us, and it's not one that we've solved. We continue to work on. It is very hard for us to figure out what you will find appealing within Second Life or within this universe of creativity. So I think a lot of people come to it and are like, well, it's not for me. I've seen what it is and it's not for me. And then if you take them by the hand and you say, well, by the way, are you into quilting? Because I can show you a place in Second Life where there's these wonderful communities who are making carpets and fabrics and all of these wonderful things. Or are you into aircraft? I remember I was showing a CEO of another company. He was just looking at Second Life and we were chatting about business. And I was like, oh, and this is one of my favorite slots. And he was generally unimpressed. Right up until I said, oh, and this is one of my favorite areas. And I took him to this airport where there are all of these aircraft recreated within Second Life. And he just flipped his lid. He was like, this is amazing. And I can fly these? Like, yeah. I was actually on stage last weekend and I got asked about the biggest misconception about Second Life. And my answer is, we have the same amount of interest in adult content as Google does. But you don't think of Google as the adult search engine, which it is. We're very broad. And when you have people able to create whatever they want, they will create whatever they want, and that will be interests of all kinds. And I embrace that. It takes a lot for people to understand that because they believe one company is making all the content and therefore they're making this kind of content. I also think it's rather childish. Myself in England and living in the States, I think that there's this rather childish cultural obsession with sex. And it's like, really? I mean, it's interesting, but, it's normal as well. It's kind of a healthy thing. Like, why are you guys so obsessed by this? I think it's because video games, at least in the UK and the United States, it's always been very taboo. And it's, it's okay to have genocide, blowing people's heads off, but heaven forbid you show an act of love.
The Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley is a weekly production of Basic Drax Entertainment. The show is supported by Weimar Shop for Bohemians, the 1920s Berlin Project, Vintage Retro Market Street, Yordi Sands, Fuzz on Acid, Inara Pay, Kitty O'Toole, Autumn Ashteen, Stefan Gaudio, and Mr. X. Special thanks to Fluffy McFluff for providing the station ID this week. Contact the show via Skype, Drax Files, Avatar Drax Files, or email radio@draxfiles.com.